We will now begin the question and answer session. To ask a question, you may press star then one on your touch-tone phone. If you're using a speakerphone, please pick up your handset before pressing the keys. If at any time your question has been addressed and you would like to withdraw your question, please press star, then two. We also ask that you please limit yourself to one question, and if you have further questions, you may re-enter the question queue. And at this time, we'll pause momentarily to assemble our roster. And the first question will come from Andrew Rubin with Morgan Stanley. Please go ahead.
Hey, Andrew at Morgan Stanley here. Thanks very much for the question. I'd like to explore a bit the sustainability of some of the trends you're seeing in Argentina. Items sold, it looks like this step change to 52% growth. So I'm trying to understand even quarter on quarter what drove such an acceleration. And similarly, when we look to the contribution profit in the country, you mentioned the reinvestment in Brazil, reinvestment in Mexico, but still quite strong margin in Argentina. So trying to understand the sustainability of that trend and how you're thinking about investments in the country going forward. Thank you.
Perhaps our speaker lines are muted.
Hey, Andrew. This is Ariel. Thanks for your questions. So, as you said, we had an amazing quarter in Argentina with last year recovery in demand, strengthening even further. We were able to capture strong growth. As you said, 126% of GMV growth year over year, 52% on items sold, items per unique buyer going up. Of course, there are different effects, right? On the one hand, we are comparing our numbers with a baseline from Q1 last year, which was a bit weak. But simultaneously, we see ourselves, and more importantly, we see ourselves gaining market share. And that's not just because of what happened last year, but it's also because of everything we've been executing over the last few months in order to help the business get recovered, being in shipping and making our prices more affordable, pushing for more financing, improving selection, and so on. So in all, we continue to enhance our value proposition, and we'll continue to do so in the coming quarters. Of course, comparables will get tougher, but we are convinced we have the core of what we need to continue having a great business coming from the country.
And just to complement, Andrew, yes, we're seeing clearly stabilization of Argentina. We have seen it for the past few quarters, but obviously we have a tough comp. Comp last year was a really tough quarter, Q1, so that also helped us with the comparison. But having said that, we've seen lower inflation, decreasing interest rates, which is helping us with our credit book. Our credit book grew by 4x year on year in Argentina in dollar terms. Not only that, but improved profitability as well. That's helping profitability in Argentina. Asset under management from a very large base in Argentina continues to grew at 69% year on year. And profitability, overall, the consolidated profitability for Argentina improved by 11 percentage points during the quarter compared to last year. So we think we are very optimistic about Argentina, not only because of macro, but more important than that, because of all the brand that we have in Argentina, both for MercadoLibre and Mercado Pago, the user experience that we have in Argentina, performing extremely well, as Ari mentioned, both in commerce as well as in fintech. And we will continue to deploy and improve the user experience in Argentina, just like we're doing in the other countries.
And if I were to add one comment is with regards to the reinvestment we're doing in Brazil and Mexico on the fintech side, that is mostly related to our credit card in those countries. And we have not yet launched a credit card in Argentina. So when we do, definitely we will invest also in building that portfolio.
Great. Thank you all for the color.
The next question will come from Irma Gars with Goldman Sachs. Please go ahead.
So 1P GMV posted some really solid growth. Can you talk a little bit in more detail about what drove this growth and what categories perhaps contributed more? Was supermarket, for example, a relevant force here? And if you can also comment on margin evolution here, are you getting closer to break even, X ads, and on a full cost basis, or is that something on the cards for this year? Thank you.
Hey, Irma, how are you? Ariel here again. So yes, as you said, 1P had a tremendous Q1 with GMV growth evolving 102 year-over-year with strong performance across market and across categories. And I would say that's the consequence of continuing to improve selection and price competitiveness. We also continue to make progress in terms of managing the business through more and more technology. We are doing automatic onboarding, automatic buying, automatic pricing, and that's all contributing for us to get better economics and simultaneously continuing to grow. I would say growth in 1P is not driven by supermarket. 1P supermarket is growing, but our growth in 1P goes much beyond what happened in supermarket and is more and more spread across different categories of our business. Of course, consumer electronics continues to hold a big share of what we are doing in 1P. So to the second part of the question, going to supermarket, we are extremely satisfied with the consistent progress we have been making in supermarket for some quarters already. In Q1, we grew 65% year-over-year. That's faster than any other category in our marketplace and sequentially accelerated. And I'd say that's the result of an improved value proposition across the board, right? So we have better and more consistent selection. We have better navigation with aisles that facilitates shopping experience. We have deployed features for repurchase and some other things that allow our users to fill in their carts and buy stuff easily. We improved our promotional activities and special dates. And last but not least, we are increasing the share of 1P within supermarket. And we are doing so because it helps us get more effective in getting consistency and availability of supply day after day, but it also brings efficiency and improvement in economics, right? So 1P in supermarket actually has better unit economics than 3P as we manage to operate with massive movements in our warehouses operating by pallets and master cases. We manage to get better revenues from advertising through our relationships with manufacturers. So 1P is and will definitely play a strategic role in supermarket moving forward. Going to the question on margins, year-over-year margins in supermarket in particular continue to improve. So we are excited with that. And that's part of the reason why we feel comfortable investing behind doing, more and more side merchandising to push for a category in which we have a lot of confidence and we have proven that can bring downstream impact in the users that do engage in buying consumer packaged goods in MercadoLibre.
The next question will come from Robert Ford with Merrill Lynch. Please go ahead.
Hey, good evening, Richard, Martin, Ariel, Osvaldo. Thanks for taking my question. With respect to fast-moving consumer goods, I was actually surprised that it was a highlight in Argentina. Can you talk a little bit about the TAM? Across the region, maybe the halo effect for other categories, how you're thinking about subscribe and save. And you alluded to this, Ariel, but how big of an unlock is this in terms of having now a full funnel solution in FMCG for advertising?
Hey, Bob. Ariel once again. So thanks for the question. I think in general terms, e-commerce penetration in FMCG is pretty low. So longer term, the opportunity is huge. We are just starting with this category, both ourselves and probably some of our competitors. So we are excited with everything we see and with everything we can build as to push that penetration closer to what e-commerce represents to the general retail. On halo effect, I was just mentioning before, we do measure downstream impact of supermarkets, so buyers who buy CPG in MercadoLibre end up buying more of general merchandise in MercadoLibre as well, and that's very positive. Then there's a huge list of product improvements that we need to deploy and we need to code first. Subscribe and Save is definitely in that list. It will get a time in which we will be able to do that, but we're more on the basic feature building right now. So many things to continue doing in order to get there. We will at some point, but again, excited with the progress. This is happening in every single market where we operate, and we expect that to continue in the future.
The next question will come from Marcelo Santos with JP Morgan. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for taking my questions. I would like to ask for an update on the logistics plan, especially on Brazil. I think there was some news saying that you're planning to boost the distribution center deployment. So where you are now, where do you want to get? And if you could also comment on other regions. Thank you very much.
Hey, Marcelo, how are you? Yeah, I think there's nothing changing in terms of our logistics plan to be shared in this call. As we mentioned in the past, we think logistics is a key enabler for the growth of our business, and we don't want to take risks in terms of not having the required capacity to deal with demand. But given our current scenario and our internal projections, there are no changes to what we announced in the past in terms of footprint. So we were very active in deploying a large number of fulfillment centers last year. I think this Q in particular, the number was a bit lower, but that's just because of seasonality and time to market in setting up new facilities. But we'll continue building and expanding our footprint as needed in order to deal with the demand that we think we will continue generating in the marketplace.
And to complement from a financial perspective, you take logistics investment or CapEx and logistics this quarter as percentage of revenues is consistent with what we had a year ago. So similar path from a financial perspective.
The next question will come from Rodrigo Gastim with Itaú BBA. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I just would like to double click here on the main drivers behind Argentina's contribution margin evolution. You said it is easy comps, I understand that, but you've reached the highest contribution margin ever. So just wondering here where it mostly came from. Is it coming from, higher take rates, revenue mix with higher growth, the fintech business, with the acquiring business, which has higher margins, SG&A dilution from the faster top line growth? So anything here on the main drivers, specific drivers in Argentina, actually to help us to understand the future would also be very helpful. Thank you, guys.
Hi, Rodrigo, it's Martin here. I think Argentina performed extremely well both on commerce and fintech. Most of our businesses grew very nicely in the quarter. I think that's the main, one of the main drivers is growth that enabled us to dilute fixed costs in a very efficient way, and also to find efficiencies in logistics and in many other areas of our business. The credit business grew very nicely, I mentioned it before, and improved profitability. Interest rates coming down in Argentina, helping us also with the credit business, not only because of more adoption of credit, because it's more affordable to people, but also by lowering the cost of funding, it improves our margins on that particular product. So I think for the most part, we've seen recoveries, and as Ari mentioned earlier, in commerce, items sold growing at 50+% year on year. So I think this is throughout the business. Margins have improved, and this is the reason why, not only because of comp from last year, but also genuine and sustainable improvements on profitability we've seen in Argentina so far.
The only thing I would add to that is that as interest rates have continued coming down, we also saw an increase in the percentage of transactions that were paid with credit cards and installments, where we have also extra revenues and an extra take rate.
The next question will come from Neha Agarwala with HSBC. Please go ahead.
Hi. Can you talk a bit about the asset quality trends? We did expect some seasonality and some seasonal worsening, but I also see that there's stronger growth in credit cards, which should dilute the asset quality, both early delinquencies and 90-day NPL. So if you can shed some more light on what kind of trends should we expect going forward, and also if there's any contribution of the growth in the Argentina credit business on these asset quality numbers that we are seeing. Thank you so much.
So I'd say there are several moving parts when we look at our portfolio of loans. Basically, on the one hand, we are increasing the share of credit cards to the overall portfolio, the share of credit cards to the overall portfolio. And even though, yes, credit cards have a lower NIMAL than other parts of the portfolio, the NIMAL of credit cards itself has been improving. We never had such a good quarter as this one. So the asset quality is super good. What is changing is the share there. And also as this, we grow our portfolio and older cohorts mature, the percentage of cohorts that are older and therefore with a positive NIMAL will increase, and therefore this goes in the opposite direction. This improves and offsets the change in mix. And then we are moving up market, and by moving up markets both in the merchant and particularly in the consumer side of the credit book. And this what means is we will have a little bit lower risk, but also lower spreads because of the better credit we are offering. And so I would say that those have been the main drivers behind the change of mix in the credit portfolio. With regards to Argentina, I would say that is the country where we find delinquencies to be the lowest. Part of the reason behind that is a country where the private sector has lower debt than in every other market, just because the credit markets were closed for so long, and also that people really use Mercado Pago pretty much every day, so they tend to pay us back quickly because we are, in many cases, their primary account, and they need us for their everyday lives. And so the credit quality in Argentina continues to be very good, and that has driven up the increases Martin mentions in terms of portfolio size, both on the consumer and on the merchant side of the business.
The next question will come from Jeffrey Elliott with Autonomous. Please go ahead.
Hello, thanks very much for taking the question. Can you discuss the strategy in terms of deposits in Brazil? We've seen the 120% of CDI rate offered over the last few days. What's behind that? Is that about building customer loyalty? Is it about funding? Is it about something else? Can you give some thoughts there?
Sure, Geoffrey. I would say that the main driver for that is really it's marketing and positioning ourselves as really the leading digital bank. It's something that when we look at our positioning, it's moving in this direction, and this really adds to principality. Once consumers start bringing their money into Mercado Pago, what they do is they start using Mercado Pago more often. We increase their retention. We increase the use they do of their money in the marketplace. There are many positives. We launched a campaign a few weeks back, a very powerful marketing campaign in Brazil, where we are starting to use the yellow color as background instead of a blue color. And also we have recruited Anita, which is a very popular singer in Brazil, to push for our to advertise Mercado Pago, and that is working very nicely. And part of the value proposition is that we are the account that pays the most in Brazil, and so we are making sure that continues to be the case. There are limits to that, as you know, or there are three different conditions you have to keep in order to get the 120% of CDI. You have to be part of our loyalty program. You have to put together the money in a special pot, and there's a limit of a few thousand reais that you can invest in that pot. So I think it's working nicely. We have created a lot of awareness, and people associate us more and more with a digital bank. And so it's thinking, I would say, in the right direction.
The next question will come from Caio Prado with UBS. Please go ahead.
Hello and good evening. Thanks for the opportunity for asking questions here. I would like to explore a little bit more about the credit business. First, I would like to understand how is your appetite today across your main products, if you can share. Last quarter, you made clear that you were going to reduce the issuance of microcards. So just wondering if you can share a little bit the effects from that and more about the strategy going forward. Also, if you can talk a little bit by region would be helpful. And finally, we noted a drop of your credit portfolio within one of your funding structures findings in Brazil in March. And in this report, you mentioned that you used almost $800 million from own cash for funding on the fintech. So can you provide further details on this? What is the funding breakdown of the portfolio today? And if you are somewhat changing this strategy going forward, and if so, what's the rationale? Thank you very much.
Hi, Caio. Let me start with how we're seeing the credit portfolio in general, and let me start with Brazil and our risk appetite in Brazil. We have not seen any deterioration in our portfolio. I think that both on the consumer side and on the credit side, we continue to be very profitable, and NPLs continue to be very healthy. And now in Brazil, as I mentioned, the credit card book, the recent cohort has the lowest first payment defaults we have seen. So we are very excited with how our credit models are evolving. That said, we have taken some more measures to reduce risk because we are looking at what's happening in the market, and we have seen some deterioration from other players. And so what we have done is, beyond reducing the issuance of microcards, we have been, I'd say, more conservative with regards to those customers who have the lower credit score. And I'd say this tightening is rather small, but it's something that we have done, and we are very comfortable with the level of risk we are currently taking. Something similar has happened in Mexico, probably more towards the end of last year and early this year. Then we have been able to relax a little bit the issuance of new cards, but we were also more conservative and tightened it a little with regards to those customers that have a lower credit score. But we have not seen any impact in our NPLs.
Regarding funding, Caio, the strategy continues to be the same. Just as a reminder, we fund our credit books in Mexico and Brazil mostly with warehouse facilities, which are funded by large banks, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and Citibank. And in Argentina, we typically go to the capital markets on a regular basis to fund our credit portfolio. In Brazil specifically, which you ask, we also book certain loans on our financial institution, as opposed to sending it to the FIDIC. And sometimes we optimize the cost of funding by leaving some more loans in our financial institution, and this is what we did this quarter. This is probably what you're referring to. But there's no change in terms of the share of third-party funding and the ways we are funding our credit book. This is mostly a tactical adjustment that we did this quarter.
The next question will come from João Soares with Citigroup. Please go ahead.
Thank you for taking the question. Very quick ones and kind of follow-ups. The first one is just to understand if there should expect any, what would be the repercussions on the commerce growth when you move, when you try to de-risk a little bit your concession, right? Initially, we saw with the microcredits and we saw limited impact, and now you're moving towards cutting some of the let's say middle level risk here on the client. So just wanted to understand if there would be any repercussions on the commerce growth, and just to understand the opportunity of the credit card in Argentina and any view on timing Should we expect a similar impact that we saw as you start to accelerate credit origination in other countries? Should we expect something similar in Argentina? I don't know how is the behavior changes varies, right, from if you compare to Brazil and Mexico. Those would be the questions. Thank you.
Hi, Joao. Let me address first the first part of the question, which is what repercussion it may have or not in the marketplace, what the actions we're taking with Mercado Pago. I would say we don't expect any repercussions in the marketplace. When we look and what we track so closely is what we call blue money, which is the total of payments on the marketplace that are coming from any of the Mercado Pago own sources, such as account to account or personal loans or credit cards. And the sum of those three variables continue to grow in all three markets, in Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico, and we expect that to continue to be the case. So we don't expect to see any deceleration in the marketplace driven by us tightening a little bit on the credit side. And moving on to the second part, which was the potential evolution of the credit card in Argentina, we expect this to be a very relevant card in the market. I would say that we have been learning. We first launched in Brazil, then we were able to launch faster in Mexico, and I believe we have a very strong position in Argentina, and we would expect it to be interesting. Obviously, we will be cautious as we adapt the models to the local country. Each country is different, but we expect to be able to do that in the second, to start issuing cards in the second half of the year.
The next question will come from Marvin Fong with BTIG. Please go ahead.
Great. Thanks for taking my questions. Congratulations on the quarter. I would just like to drill down, I think, on Mexico. You mentioned in the shareholder letter that there was one high ASP category that you saw a bit of softness on. Was just wondering if you could elaborate on that and what growth outside of that category looked like. Was the growth outside that category consistent with what we've seen in prior quarters in Mexico? And then just a quick question on NIMAL. I think you referenced the seasonality factor, that the fourth quarter was unusually high because of the additional payment period. If we kind of normalize for all of that, and I recognize all your commentary about the underlying strength and the credit card is gaining share there, but at a headline level, would NIMAL have improved quarter over quarter without that seasonal factor, or just kind of any visibility on when you think NIMAL at a consolidated level might begin expanding quarter over quarter would be great. Thank you.
Hey Marvin, Ariel here. Thanks for your question. So we are very satisfied with the progress of our business in Mexico in general and during Q1 in particular. We continued compounding growth and value created for our millions of consumers. Unique buyers grew north of 25% and top line remained very solid. I would say we were still negatively impacted by a slower start of the year for our technology vertical. It grew below the average of the rest of the marketplace. We basically saw more aggressive competition, both in terms of pricing and financing in this category. And in some cases, we lacked some of the selection that we needed to compete. We have clearly identified the issue and have several targets initiatives to deal with this. Such as some selected adjustments to our premium take rates, some rebates to improve price competitiveness, and some other things. We are already seeing positive results coming from each of those. And by the way, the effect from technology was kind of isolated. Our overall GMV continued well ahead the market, and the rest of the categories grew even further. I would say with the trend that we used to have in previous quarter, around 30% year over year in general terms. So very good momentum.
And with regards to NIMAL, I would say that both both sequentially and year-over-year, I would say that part of the compression is due to the function of spreads and product and country mix. On the one hand, the mix, as I mentioned, is more towards credit cards. The share of credit cards increased by 8 percentage points over the year. And this is structurally a product that has a lower NIMAL than consumer loans, for example. And then also, as we are moving up market, both in the consumer and merchant originations, that also has an impact both on yield and in bad debt yield, basically. So it's safer. We have less defaults, but we have an impact in revenue yield and bad debt yield. And as for country mix, Argentina's share of the credit portfolio doubled year-over-year, and this partially compensates for the NIMAL compression because we have higher margins in Argentina.
The next question will come from Craig Maurer with FT Partners. Please go ahead.
Yes, hi. Thanks for taking the questions. I wanted to ask a bit more specifically about the fintech competition in Mexico. Your product offering is, trending more toward what we see from the likes of Nu, and I was wondering if you can comment on how you see that evolving over time. Secondly, with regards to the trade war dynamics that the U.S. is propagating, we've been hearing that those e-com businesses that are getting shut out of the U.S. market are redeploying resources to LATAM. And I was wondering if you're seeing any change in behavior from your competition, specifically from Asia in Latin America. Thanks.
Hi, Craig. Let me take the first question. I would say that definitely in Mexico, all over Latin America, what we want to be in Mercado Pago is, on the one hand, acquiring business, but on the other hand, we want to become the best and largest digital bank in the region. So definitely we'll be competing with the more traditional banks and with fintechs also, who are also the digital banks. And we are very excited by the growth we are seeing. We're very excited by the net promoter score we are obtaining from our users, also from the frequency in which the users use Mercado Pago, and also by the sheer growth of our user base in Mexico. I would say that the most relevant products for us have been the super yielding account and the credit card, and both of them are growing strongly. And so I would say, yes, I think there is an opportunity in Mexico. We are seeing that what we saw happen in Brazil over the last 10 years in terms of increased use of financial services, and in particular of digital financial services, that is happening in Mexico right now, and we want to seize that opportunity.
Yeah, I think the second part of your question was regarding international competition and cross-border trade into Latin America. We have been operating in a very competitive environment. There are many players coming to the region, not only shipping from Asia, but also building their operations locally in the region. So we haven't seen a change in that pattern. Now we continue to compete with them, and nothing really changed, at least in the short term, because of tariffs. In fact, the other way around, there are certain tariffs that were imposed in Mexico and Brazil, increasing the cost of shipping products into the country, that diminished a little bit the volume of cross-border trade into the region. On the flip side, Argentina flexibilized and opened the market, so there's more volume coming into Argentina. That represents an opportunity for us as well, because we're shipping products from the U.S. But at the same time, some international players will come into Argentina, but we much rather see an open market than a closed market. So to summarize, I think for the most part, we haven't seen a big impact of related to the tariffs in the U.S.
The next question will come from Deepak Mathivanan with Cantor Fitzgerald. Please go ahead.
Hey guys, thanks for taking the question. So Martin, EBIT margin in 1Q is up 70 basis points year on year, and you kind of have a relatively favorable comp in the next few quarters as some of the credit card portfolio headwinds stabilize. Argentina contribution margin trends have also been very good in 1Q. So I guess the question is, should we still expect some of the investment plans that you have constrain full year margin expansion? Can you give us an updated view on how you think about the margin trends? And then the second question, just to double-click a little bit on ads, the penetration as a percent of GMV seems to have kind of gained a few more basis points quarter-on-quarter than we typically see. Can you expand how much is driven by ad units like display video versus some of the more traditional ad units? And can we expect this run rate of penetration gains to continue in the next few quarters? Thank you so much.
Hi, Deepak. How are you? Yeah, I mean, you're correct. I mean, margins, if you look at EBIT margin, improved by 70 basis points year-on-year from 12.2 to 12.9%. Most of the explanation for that is country mix. Argentina, which by the way has a bigger margin than the other countries, increased shares of revenues from 14% to 34%. So that on itself helps us in terms of improving margins. On the other hand, Argentina itself also improved margins as we discussed earlier today. That also helped in positive direction. That more than compensated this quarter the investments that we continue to make in Brazil and Mexico, mainly in logistics and credit card. That generated some margin compression in Brazil and Mexico. But I think obviously we don't guide regarding margins, but we have been consistently saying that we don't manage the business to a short-term margin goal. What we want to make sure is that we do not miss the large opportunity of growth that we have ahead of us in commerce and fintech. If we need to invest behind those opportunities, we will continue to do so, even if it might make some short-term pressure on margins. I think the example of last year where we had in 2024, we have margins slightly lower than 2023, but we deliver strong growth, and this is something that we want to continue to deliver because the opportunity continues to be enormous in Latin America. Only 15% of transactions are done online, and we play an important role of bringing more people online. Fintech adoption and financial inclusion is very, very low. Most of the region, particularly in Mexico, as Osvaldo was mentioning. So again, the focus is on growth, but at the same time managing for a reasonable profitability, as we call it in MELI, grow fit, finding the right balance between growth and profits.
Hey, Deepak, Ariel here. So to your question about that, we had a solid quarter. We grew about 50% year-over-year of an FX neutral basis with penetration going up in Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina. And that's basically coming from an improvement in our product stack. We had a great quarter in brand ads, which is part of our search offering. So although coming from a low base, we have seen a positive acceleration coming from the extension of the product to sellers. So it was previously only available for top brands, and making it more widely available is paying off. Kind of the same thing happened with display. So we grew this quarter above 100% year-over-year in display, similarly to brand ads, coming from a widely available offer to more sellers, and also coming from new features in the product, like automatic generation of creativities for campaigns, better analytics, etc. Paths continues to do very well. So we remain optimistic, right? So we have already a business that is the size of $1 billion in revenues per year, but we think we are just getting started. And last but not least, the launch of Mercado Play on TV is another exciting step in the direction of expanding our inventory beyond the marketplace, and it will definitely play a key role in our strategy in the long term.
The next question will come from Josh Beck with Raymond James. Please go ahead.
Yep. Thank you so much for taking the question. I wanted to ask about the magnitude of short-term margin pressure that you're seeing from the strategic investments in shipping. So just would like to understand that. And then a little bit of a follow-on to I think Craig's question. Are you seeing any impact from maybe higher ocean freight rates, because there's certainly been such a slowdown, or maybe just kind of help us think through the sourcing of some of your goods, if you have any notable, exposure to some of these ocean routes that, all of a sudden have a lot less volume. Would love an update there.
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned earlier, right, when you look at the margins in the different countries, and you can find this in our disclosures, the year contribution margins in Argentina improved by 11 points compared to last year, for the reason that I explained earlier, whereas on the opposite side, Mexico and Brazil compressed roughly 5 percentage points, both of them, compared to last year. And the reason for that, the main reason for that, I would point out to 3 reasons. Credit card continues to grow and putting some margin pressure in the short term. As we continue to improve the profitability of the credit card, that might change. If we look at credit cards older than 2 years are already profitable. The logistic infrastructure will continue to build our logistic infrastructure to try to increase the penetration of fulfillment in Brazil and keep up with the levels that we have in Mexico, in a market that's growing, 25 to 30% year on year. So that requires investments. And then lastly, I think if you look at year over year, both Mexico and Brazil were affected by the devaluation. So that also put a little pressure on both Brazil and Mexico's contribution margins. Regarding the second part of your questions, our CBT business is relatively small. It's mostly into Mexico. It's nascent into Argentina over the past this quarter and the previous quarter. We started to deliver products into Argentina now that it's open. But we plan to continue to invest and develop that business because we think that it's a good opportunity for as a business on itself, but also to complement the offering that we have within our marketplace to continue shipping products from Asia directly into Latin America and from the Texas operation that we have in the U.S.
The next question will come from James Friedman with Susquehanna. Please go ahead.
Hi, it's Jamie Friedman at Susquehanna. Thanks for taking my question. I was wondering if you could share any data that you might have on Credito, the credit portfolio, and its attached rate to the marketplace. So in some markets, I think you've occasionally disclosed that, but what sort of accelerator do you enjoy as you originate and that attaches to purchasing in the broader marketplace ecosystem? Thank you.
So I think that what we have disclosed in general is this what we call blue money, which covers on the one hand credit, but also money that's already within the Mercado Pago system, and that is roughly in the order of depending on the country, on 20 to 30% of the GMV we process on the marketplace. That has been trending up, as I mentioned, but it continues to be within that range for the mainstream countries.
The next question will come from Danny Elger with XP. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for taking my question. I have a quick one on competition. It's actually a follow-up. Regarding Brazil, if you could just update us on your view regarding the TikTok shop launch this month here. How do you see that in terms of maybe affecting you guys? And in Argentina, you mentioned about the increased interest. We even saw some news recently. If you could also share your view on the recent developments in terms of competition in Argentina, that would be interesting as well. Thank you.
Hey, Danny, how are you? Ariel here. So on TikTok, I think it's still early days. So they launched in Mexico a few months back. They are just launching in Brazil, so we don't have too much info to share with you. Of course, we are paranoid, so we follow them closely, but there's not much to be shared. In Mexico, they seem to be focused on low-value items coming from domestic sellers, to be seen what their strategy is going to be in Brazil. Taking a step back, I would say that there seems to be a higher overlap in their value prop with some other platforms more than with MercadoLibre. But again, time will tell, right? So we will follow that one closely and decide how to respond. To wrap this one up, I would say that typically when there's a new entrant in the e-commerce space, particularly when they come with a different playbook, they tend to bring new users who used to shop offline into the online world, and that will create another opportunity for us as well, and we hope we can take advantage of that one. In terms of Argentina, even more early. So we saw interest, and we know that Temu launched operations in the country. Amazon has also been shipping items from the U.S. into Argentina, but not much to be said, right? There are no numbers or indications that they are getting progress that is calling our attention. As Martin was saying before, this presents an opportunity for us as well. So 3 weeks after the government opened the regulatory framework, we were live with our drop shipping from the U.S. into Argentina. Now we are live with shipping items from our Texas inventory into Argentina as well, and we expect to continue expanding that selection to complement our local marketplace.
And this will conclude our question and answer session. The conference is now concluded. Thank you for attending today's presentation. You may now disconnect.